walk around this city or any town or even village, and there are posters everywhere. Too many, some people say, and not least because of health and safety. They are the signs of the times. But today we're looking at the signs of bygone times. And with me in the studio is Fred O'Brien, who has designed many a commemorative plaque. He knows more about plaque than a dentist. He's a Scouser. He's been doing this for more than 40 years. And Liverpool is, I'm happy to say, festooned with examples of his work. Good to have you here, Fred.
Thank you.
Now, I know you are particularly proud of a plaque you've done concerning John Lennon. Tell us about that.
Yes, that's one I'm very proud to have done. I didn't have a client for that. I did the plaque simply because it needed to be done.
This marks his birthplace.
It's on his birthplace, the former Oxford Street Maternity Hospital. And I had it unveiled at 6:30 in the evening on what would have been John's 60th birthday. And there were three Brazilian people there, 2 Swedes, 15 Americans, and all the rest were Brits waiting for the curtain to open to reveal the plaque. And at 6:30, I said to this woman to my right, "You pull the cord." So as you pull the cord, the curtains opened. There was a round of applause. And she became quite emotional. She said, "I'm from Philadelphia, and I've been a fan of John since I was 4. I'm 44 now." So I was very pleased about that. And it gave me a real charge that whereas his countless fans all over the world were again mourning his sad and untimely death, I was commemorating his birth.
And a non-celebrity opening, as it were. It was just this tourist who happened to be passing.
A group of people, just a group of people.
Many of the plaques you've done concern famous people. We'll talk about some of those, but they're not always famous people. But Dickens, for instance, now everyone knows that Dickens read his work at St George's Hall, famously, and loved Liverpool. But he was, for a day, a special constable.
He was doing research for his book, The Uncommercial Traveller. And for a day, he was sworn in as a special constable operating out of the Bridewell at the bottom of Duke Street. And that plaque was a bronze, and it was unveiled by Jimmy McGovern. My client for that was Colin McEwen of the Liverpool Film Studios, a mad keen Dickens fan. And so there's a group of 50 or 60 people, and somebody other than Jimmy McGovern spoke first, and then Jimmy McGovern said, "And an actually great pleasure to unveil the plaque." Pulls the cord, and the batten and the curtains fell off the wall and hit him on the head.
Dear.
But he took it in very, very good part, and people were wetting themselves laughing. It was a super little event.
Now, you've called your plaques, not in deference to my profession, but journalism in metal.
Journalism in bronze, yes.
In bronze.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, my basic tenet is that what makes something history is if it is so marked. The museum's fraternity and the historians, they won't bother. There's a very high-handed, arrogant attitude. Well, we know what history is. This is history, and this is history, and this is history, but not that, and certainly not that, as though there's some sort of quota. There's no quota, we just carry on going.
But the thing is that plaques have to be seen.
Yes.
And therefore, you know, that's the whole purpose of them.
Yes.
And would it be a good idea, do you think, to have a sort of special tourism walk to join all these up?
I've had the idea in my mind for many years now. I'd like to see a Liverpool Walk of Fame. In 1994, Jack Cooper, long dead, former school teacher, history teacher, brought out a book called Liverpool Firsts, which ran to 406 entries in 14 areas of endeavour. and some of them need plaques, in my opinion.
But then people could go on a walking tour.
Oh
couldn't
yes, yes. But you could come. It's not all Beatles. I bow to nobody in my affection for the Beatles, but it's not all just Beatles. You could mark the engineers and the physicists and the scientists and the industrialists. No shortage of material.
Well, of course, not everyone knows, perhaps, that they're living or working in a building or at a site of significance.
No.
Near where I live, for instance, the Irish artist and songwriter Percy French died. I know the house, it's near where I live. He wrote The Mountains of Mourne Sweep Down to the Sea, but I'm sure the people living in the house don't know. What about procurement of plaques? Are you not beyond knocking on the door saying, do you know that so-and-so?
Oh yes, I knock on doors. I knock on doors.
And then if you knocked on this door, who would pay for it? Who would pay?
I'm going to knock on the door of 3 Gambia Terrace, where briefly John Lennon, Rod Murray, Rod Jones and Jeff Mohammed shared a flat there.
They were all art students together.
They were all art students at the College of Art, as I was.
That's on your door knock list,
Yes, that's on my door knocking list.
But of course, these things have to be financed. So
Oh,
just going
yes.
back to the thing, how
Well,
do you do?
as funding is always a problem. For instance, my most recent plaque commemorating the birthplace of Brian Epstein at 4 Rodney Street, which in 1934, when he was born, was a private hospital. And my client for that was the Beatles Book Club. Now, the Beatles Book Club was just a title given them by a group of Beatle fans, and they raised the money, and I did the job, and was delighted to have done so.
Rodney Street is particularly blessed with famous people.
Oh,
There's
yes,
not
yes.
one of your plaques, but there's the one to Gladstone.
Yes.
And I always remember it said, Gladstone, 4 times Prime Minister, was born here, and some wag had written on the wall next to it, not 4 foot up the wall, he wasn't, you know. So the whole point is, can we over-plaque?
Well, maybe it shouldn't be for me to say, but 400 years ago, Liverpool was a fishing village, and in that time, we've had a social history that would do credit to a city twice the size, 3 times the size, as masters of history to interpret. That's what I'm into, interpreting, interpretation.
I know that when Jeremy Isaacs came as chairman of the Capital Culture Judges, he said, oh, you've produced this marvellous supplement of 100 well-known Scousers. And then he said, and you're probably the only city in the country that could do that, and you could probably produce another 100. So, I mean, Liverpool is a fantastic place for this.
Incredible, absolutely
Unsurpassed
incredible.
outside London, probably.
Yes. One that interests, I was delighted to have done, was a plaque to commemorate Robert Morris, who was born at Chorley Court, which is a slum block on the corner of Fontenoy Street and Dale Street in 1734. At the age of 13, his father takes him to America. At the age of 21, he's a wealthy New York merchant. He goes on to become second in importance only to first American President George Washington. Fiscally, economically, he was far, far more important than Washington.
He founded the futures market, didn't he?
Yeah, he founded the futures market. He was the first and only superintendent of finance. He was the secretary of the Navy. He virtually ran Congress. Nothing happened without his say-so. He bought the western half of New York State for $333.33, and he owned 6 million acres in 3 other states.
Well, the thing is about that, about his plaque as we know it is inside a building. You want another one on the outside of the building.
Yes, it's in the atrium of Blackburn Assurance Chambers, but I'd like to see one on the outside, unveiled by maybe a direct or lateral descendant of Robert Morris, or President Obama, or
President Obama, you'd like to come
President Obama,
well, there's a date.
or the ambassador.
You don't
At
lack
the least,
ambition, Fred,
at
in
the
who you
very-
get.
At the very least, the cultural attaché from the
At the
embassy.
very least, yes, why not? But that would be, where would that be?
That would be on the outside of the building, on the Dale Street frontage, at head height.
And of course, sometimes the original buildings or sites don't
Have gone,
exist, so
and
they've got to go on
That's a case.
got to go on.
That's a case. On this site stood blah, blah.
That's right. Well, in the second half of the programme, we'll be talking, of course, about some of the people who perhaps haven't been recognised yet, who need recognising.
Yes.
I'll be asking you about that. But I mean, the list is endless, and
Yes.
it's very subjective, isn't it? In the sense
Adrian
that
Henry, Beryl Bainbridge, Sam Walsh, no shortage of them. No shortage of them.
you're ready and able and still turning these out.
Oh, yes. I'm the most available man in the Northern Hemisphere.
Well, you've been doing it over a period of 40 years.
Yes, yeah.
When you started, of course, it wouldn't be particularly fashionable, but
No,
now
no.
everyone's into heritage and.
But we need this this Liverpool Walk of Fame. I could do the job tomorrow, no problem.
Very good. Well, you hopefully will do some more jobs tomorrow. And when we come back after the short break, we'll be talking about some of those people who may indeed qualify to have a commemorative plaque. Thank you very much, Fred. Welcome back, and with me today is Fred O'Brien, born Scouser, whose life's work has been dedicated, or lots of it, to doing commemorative plaques around Liverpool to the famous, and not just people, to places and historical events. Fred, we were talking earlier about people who still need to be recognised. I once wrote in an article with the lovely late Adrian Henry, on this house, one day there will be a plaque saying Adrian Henry, poet, painter, musician, lived here. This is in Mount Street. And then just down the street from there, just down the street from there is where John McCabe, the composer, lived. He's only just died, age 75. So that's in one street, there's these two famous people. Now, there's some sort of rule of thumb, isn't there, that without being mawkish, you have to be dead 20 years to get a plaque.
The two basic requirements that English heritage have is that somebody needs to have been dead 20 years or have been born 100 years ago. They're the two basic rules.
But rules that can be broken, can they?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, for instance, Liz Taylor won't qualify for an English heritage plaque in Hampstead Garden suburb where she was born for another 16 years.
Right. Now, I've got here your very own plaque a colleague did for you.
Yes.
With you as a rather dashing sort of film star looks here.
That's me in my John F. Kennedy phase.
John F. Kennedy phase. I'm surprised and nicely surprised at the sheer detail in some of these plaques. Now, you did one once, so a commemorative plaque with 100 names on it or something?
No, my Billy Little plaque, which is at LFC's ground, has got 175 words on it and 4 logos and his portrait. But
not only words, I mean names you did once. And
that's the plaque in Gresford in North Wales to commemorate the Gresford colliery disaster of the 22nd of October 1934, when an underground explosion killed and entombed 266 miners and other people. And the Mayor of London launched a charity campaign, and under the terms of that charity campaign, not a penny could be spent on a named memorial, and the families were always very unhappy about it. So about 15 years ago, I was then living in Mold in North Wales, and I saw in the Mold Chronicle that the last 2 children, the 2 women then in their late 50s, they were the last recipients of the charity. And I got in touch with them, and I approached Sir William Gladstone, and he very kindly headed up a campaign to fund a big plaque, which is the biggest I've ever done. It's 2.5 meters by 0.75 meters. And that's got 266 names on it,
Now,
all of them clearly delineated.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I know only too well, having worked in the media, that
Yes.
you can spell the surname Smith
Oh,
three
of
ways.
course, yes, yes.
So the concentration needed
The
for
scope
that.
for something to have been wrong was pretty horrendous. But the good thing was that I had the full names in every case, and I mean, there were 15 Joneses and 7 Griffithses because of the multiplicity of names. Where 5 of them are identical, I put the name of the little village that they were from. So each and every name is clearly delineated.
The thing about the attention to detail on something like that, I mean, I walked past this very morning, not a commemorative plaque, but a rather expensive sign outside a hotel. They'd obviously shelled out quite a lot to have this done. Accommodation with 1M in the middle, sort of thing. So these things can happen.
Always. The only thing I can do is spell. And I've managed always, I've managed to avoid having a grammatical error or a factual error in a plaque.
Jolly good.
Yeah.
Now, that commemorative plaque in Gresford is obviously work that you've done outside Liverpool, but one of the very notable things you've done at Oxford Street in London on the HMV shop.
Oh, yes, yes.
Which was, this plaque was unveiled by George
George
Martin,
and
Sir
Nipper,
George.
and Nipper the dog.
And Nipper the dog. Now, Nipper the dog, for viewers who don't know, was the little dog on his master's voice labels who used to look into the gramophone horn.
Yeah.
A little terrier dog.
Yeah.
There's still a Nipper around, is there,
Yes,
masquerading as Nipper?
in fact, there are 3 Nippers even now.
But anyway,
Yeah.
Sir George Martin turned
George
up
Martin.
and unveiled this.
He unveiled that plaque, yes.
And what does that actually commemorate or mark?
That commemorates the 75th anniversary of HMV.
Right. How long do you think that you'll continue to do this? I mean, you were talking on the way here with me today about needing a plaque at the Blue Coat for Herbert Tyson Smith. And then immediately you think of Herbert Tyson Smith, you think of the chap Edgar Carter Preston and Julia Carter Preston and people like this. One could go on.
Yep.
How long do you think? Have you got a natural successor to do this?
No, no. My biggie, the biggest thing I'll ever do, if I pull it off, is plaques to commemorate all the British Olympians to go on the schools that they attended.
Right, there's a few hundred
Oh,
of
yeah. Well, the modern Olympics began in 1896, so there are thousands of Olympians, bronze, silver and gold, to commemorate.
Well, I'm not testing you here because I don't know whether I can remember the name myself, but the founder of the Olympics has a Liverpool connection.
Baron de Coubertin.
That's right.
Yeah. But there were games of Olympic aspiration here in Liverpool 2 or 3 years before that.
Now, these plaques, most are round, not
Yes.
all, but
Yes.
that's a good shape, is it?
Yes, that's because it's a very strong shape, giving least scope for being removed. But far more important, psychologically, the circle symbolises the sun, the moon, continuity, perfection, wholeness, the seasons, the circle of life. It cannot be improved on as a shape.
And heaven forbid, but if there is any defacing or vandalisation, these surfaces on these metal commemorative plaques can be cleaned or?
Oh, yes, yes. A zinc plaque, that's a zinc. That's got a life expectancy of many decades, but the best is bronze.
Right.
Yes.
For durability?
Oh, yes. The Epstein plaque is a bronze. And
just remind us again, you were talking about that earlier, that's in Rodney Street.
That's at 4 Rodney Street.
And that commemorates his birthplace?
That's where he was born when it was a small private hospital in 1934.
Right. I know that the old Nems shop in Whitechapel has been redeveloped, that area
Yes.
around there. Is there anything around there for
Well,
Brian?
I've been told that there was some sort of a marker, but it went walkabout.
I know it became an Ann Summers shop,
yes,
didn't
yes.
it? Which is rather how the mighty have fallen. But
Yes.
but it would be good to have something maybe
Oh,
down
yeah,
there.
no question, no question.
Because Brian Epstein, actually, the fifth Beatle, you know, is the person who hasn't really been noted as much as the Beatles. We've got the Epstein Theatre now, of course.
Very, very important in the Beatles story. Before Brian, the Beatles, they knew nothing about business. They just wanted to write and sing songs.
We need an Alan Williams plaque, though, surely. The first manager, the first Beatles manager. I'm sure he'd love a plaque.
Yes.
I don't know where you put it. In the pub,
Yeah.
next to the red wine.
Yes.
I think that'd probably be a good thing.
The Grapes on Matthew Street.
Yes, why not?
Yeah, yeah.
And Bob Wooler, of course.
Oh, I
great
did a
Bob
Bob Wooler.
Did you?
I did a Bob Wooler, which is in the cavern.
He was the
Yes.
cavern DJ, a great
Yeah.
man.
And that was unveiled by Alan Williams and Billy Butler.
Yeah, well, you know, these are great people. They're still around.
Yes.
Bob isn't, but Alan is. And of course, they're not going to get plaques until they haven't been with us for several
Quite,
years. But they can get on the list.
Yes.
And I'm sure even today you get people coming up to you suggesting who may be the subjects of future plaques.
Yes. Artist Sam Walsh rates a plaque, and Helen Forrester, the novelist, the writer.
Tuppence to cross the Mersey.
Tuppence to cross the Mersey.
Well, it's been really interesting hearing about how these things come into being, and my guest today was Fred O'Brien, designer célèbre of memorial and historical plaques, and I look forward to being back with you with another programme soon.